Welcome back to our Spectrum News 1 special, Hedingham Rise from Tragedy. I'm Tim Boyum. I had the chance to sit down with a group of neighbors that are closer now than ever, that went through this tragedy a year ago, including one man who lost his fiancée.
My fiance, we were set to get married 16 days after the shooting. Mary Marshall called me while I was at work up in Youngsville at 5:13 to let me know that she needed me to come home because our dog Scruff had slipped his collar and had run along the Neuse River Trail heading north up towards the bridge that crosses the river. Walking the trail, it's about a mile from our house to that bridge, and that she had just heard gunshots. And so I told her, okay, I'm on my way home, and clocked out and left work. By the time I got home, the neighborhood was already locked down by the police. We weren't able to get in. I had tried calling Mary multiple times on the way, hadn't gotten an answer. It rang all the way through to her voicemail. I'd hopped on the community's Facebook page and saw what was going on and that it was back at my road. And so I put a post on there that, hey, if anybody sees Mary, and I included a picture of her, call me at this number and let me know she's okay, hoping that, you know, she just hadn't had her phone because she dropped it or, you know, something when she ran or whatever. And then I spent the next several hours at the athletic center with Sergeant Powell from RPD. Until around 8:30, he went into the neighborhood to see if he could figure out anything about Mary. And he left another officer there with us. About half an hour later, that officer started asking us about Mary's tattoos. And that's when I knew, but I still didn't want to accept. And then Sergeant Powell came back, probably around 9:15, I think, to officially let me and Mary's parents know that she had been killed. Most of the night after that is pretty much just a blur of sobbing and hugging and eventually getting home, and then the next several days after that are mostly just a blur as well.
I'm amazed at how strong you are telling the story today, though.
If I don't tell the story, nothing changes. Most likely nothing will change anyway, because like we were talking about before we started recording, nobody likes politicians, and for good reason. But if I shut down and I stop talking about it, there's no chance of anything changing because it's not forefront in people's minds anymore.
How about you guys? What do you remember about that night, that day?
I was out, like I said, I was supposed to have been home, ended up making a stop along the way, and my former neighbor, she has son-in-law in law enforcement, so she was messaging me saying, you know, hey, don't go home right now, there's, you know, an active shooter on your street, and like, you know, I'm thinking like domestic violence or something like that. Like, I did not anticipate the extent to what it was. But so she texted me, and I immediately called Mary and tried to get a hold of her. Same thing, no answer, no. It just rang through, and you know, I was trying to think of other people in the neighborhood I could call and, you know, who to let know.
How about you? What do you remember about that day and night?
I was on my way home as well, and my daughter was 17 at the time, and I was just entering the neighborhood, and she called me and she said, Mom, don't go home, there's an active shooter. And I said, well, let me just see what's going on. And like you said, you couldn't go home. Everything was blocked off. I knew my husband was home, and it's just, we feel safe here. So I thought, I'm going to call him, because a lot of times we'll just leave our garage door open and our door unlocked. Yeah. So I called him. He didn't know what was going on. So I said, just shut the garage and stay inside. My daughter was up in Nightdale in the Target parking lot just waiting. So I went up there to be with her, because you just immediately want to be with your loved ones. Saw a couple other neighbors up there that couldn't get home too. And I think we were just all kind of in shock. So I just sat with my daughter and her friends for a little while. And then I think we eventually got word around 8:30 that we could come home.
Around 8:30, they started letting the cars that were backed up on South Hall Extension Road outside the neighborhood, they started letting them go into the neighborhood. They did it in phases, letting some of the front end of the neighborhood in first, and then when they realized that there was just too many cars to be able to do that, and then the whole neighborhood was safe because the shooter was over across the river, they just opened it up and let everybody in.
When it quiets down and the news media leaves, there's not as much attention in the neighborhood. I wonder what that's like and what it feels like. What did it feel like when it was over and things quieted down?
I mean, I thought it was awful because you see all these shootings all over the world, right, at schools and random places. And then all of a sudden on the national news, we're there. And that really hit home about gun control. And just something has to be done. It's just awful.
The quiet after that night of panic and chaos and pain was, it was hard. It was really hard to just reconcile that night with the more quiet, this is what our neighborhood is normally like.
We got to take a break. When we come back, we're going to bring in more neighbors. We're also going to hear how they feel about this neighborhood a year later. And later, Rob's going to share his favorite memory of Mary. Welcome back to the Spectrum News 1 special, Hedingham, Rise from Tragedy. I'm Tim Boyum. We're sitting down with some of the neighbors in this neighborhood that voluntarily agreed to talk about what they've been through, but also how they're doing a year later. It was an emotional conversation, but also, in some ways, as you'll find out later, uplifting. What do you want people to know about Hedingham that watch this on national news, that watch this unfold in Raleigh and across the state of North Carolina? What do you want them to know about Hedingham?
We're the same as them. It happened here, but it can happen there. It can happen anywhere. But that just because something bad has happened doesn't mean that the rest of the good in the rest of us won't come out. It does. We see that all the time. I saw it in a way that quite literally prevented me from becoming the hard, bitter, angry person. And we still see it all the time. You know, like we were talking earlier about, you know, this is a family neighborhood. You see families out at the playground, walking their dogs, just going for a walk, fishing at the lake.
I saw it today driving in.
Yeah.
You know, and we have some neighborhood famous people that everybody knows and that everybody waves to when they see them.
And I think it has brought us closer together as a neighborhood. I
Right.
really do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just been a good, I mean, just for people to see, something for people to do is just kind of be more aware of your people around you. So like reach out to your neighbor, your next door neighbor, you know, make yourself available as you can so that people aren't feeling so isolated and so alone. And, you know, so potentially you can help prevent or just be a voice in someone's life, be an encouragement. So they don't feel the need to go to extreme measures. You know, like that's something that's weighed on me a lot this year is just, like I said, reach out to neighbors, reach out to people next door, people who don't seem to talk a lot, still keep saying hi, still, you know, if you know somebody's celebrating something or if they've had a loss, you know, go the extra step and just get to know the neighbors.
And
like, I think
they'll
That's a lesson for any neighborhood, though.
Right, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
But,
yeah,
but
it's
they'll
just really
notice that
drawing it home.
extra step too. You know, the quiet neighbor who generally just keeps to themselves, every time you see them, if you say hi, even if that's the extent of the conversation, it's just a wave and a hey, good morning or good afternoon. The day you don't do that because you're in your own head about something, they'll notice. And there's a good chance that because of your kindness, they'll reach out to you in your moment when you might need some extra help. That happens all the time in here now.
Mm-hmm. The teenager that is now charged an adult in this, have you thought about, as obviously it seems like it's going to go to trial, Have you thought about what you might want to say to that person?
No, I don't want to talk to him. I want to attend the trial, and hopefully, once he's found guilty, I want to attend his sentencing. There's a possibility that I'll be given a chance to make a victim impact statement, but those are technically made to the judge. So I'll tell the judge how this impacted my life, both you know, the way that I saw my life going and the way that it's going instead, and personally and emotionally, but I don't want to talk to him. I don't care one bit about what he has to say. Why he did what he did doesn't matter. The fact is he did it, and he needs to be punished for it.
Are y'all ready for that to be over too? I mean, I know you probably want to see justice, but are you ready? Is that another step for the neighborhood to reach this new normal?
I think so, because the more that it's brought up, the more it's talked about, again, the harder it is to move through it, because it's like you get to a certain point in the grief process or the just processing through everything, and then it's back in the news again, and everybody's talking about it, and it's like just rehashing all of that. Obviously, we're never going to forget it. There's no way. Like, this is something that's impacted all of us, but to have it continue to be brought up, and now, 2025, 2026, like, it's going to be, a long time. It would be nice to kind of not have to keep rehashing and rehashing.
And just see justice for the families as much as it can be justice for the family.
Yeah, the closure of seeing a conviction and a sentence will be good for not just the families, but for a lot of us who lived here and were traumatized by this incident.
Before we left, I wanted to end on a personal note, to honor those who died. A moment for Rob Steele to tell us a story about Mary.
I have a picture of Mary that she had posted on her Instagram page. It's us sitting in a golf cart, and she's holding a flower, and she's smiling really big, and then I'm in the background because I'm in the passenger seat of the golf cart, and I'm smiling but sticking my tongue out at her at the same time. Mary hated golf, hated it, would not play the game, saw no point in smacking a little white ball in a little white hole. But I enjoyed it, and she enjoyed spending time with me. So she would drive the golf cart and keep my score and talk crap about my game. And one of the days that we were playing that day, we passed this, I don't even know what kind of bush it is, but this really big bush that had these pretty white flowers on them. And I ran over and picked one for her and gave it to her, and she took the picture to memorialize that. And that encapsulates so much of Mary's personality. She hated golf, but she loved me. So she went and she did the thing she hated. She wouldn't play, but she did as much of the thing that she hated as she could stand to do, because it gave her more time with me.
On behalf of everyone at Spectrum News 1, thank you for watching this special Hedingham Rise from Tragedy. On behalf of all of us, our thoughts and prayers continue to be with the people here in Hedingham.